Welcome on into a special edition of BKL Nightly. I'm Thad Brown with Caleb Carr, Rachel Liebert. We were supposed to be off this week. The idea was the Bills are done. We'll take a little break. No. The Bills have hired Joe Brady as their new head coach. We're going to talk about that and all the different pieces that go into what it means for the Bills going forward here for the next half hour. Guys, let's start easy here. Just initial reaction. Rachel, Joe Brady is the guy. What was your first thought?
My first thought was a little bit of shock, and I didn't completely agree with the hire. I think the more that I look into it, maybe I think, okay, Joe Brady isn't as much as maybe the problem as Bills fans think because of this offense not doing well. But the initial reaction was, really? Like, this is what they're doing after this whole Sean McDermott debacle and him being the first guy they interviewed? It just feels like a move I wasn't expecting.
It is certainly uninspiring. There is no one that's going to look at Joe Brady and think, wow, where are they playing the Super Bowl next year? Because we might be going. But, yeah, there are certainly pieces to it as we will dig in here through the next 30 minutes at least or so that do make some sense. Caleb?
I think my first thought was, wow, I'm surprised that they did it this quick. Like, I know a lot of people were like, oh, I think all coaches will be hired by the end of the week. I kind of expected the Bills to continue to take their time with this. They didn't really seem to be in too much of a rush. They weren't really going after huge names. Obviously, some of the guys are still, a Clint Kubiak still in the playoffs, going to the Super Bowl with the Seahawks. So there was always the thought that maybe they're going to hold out and wait for a guy like him to interview. So it kind of felt like they were going to take a little bit longer, and then all of a sudden it's just random Tuesday morning. Here's Joe Brady. And then with Rachel, I think my second thought was the way I'm thinking of it and putting it is this couldn't have been plan A. Like, I don't see how you fire Sean McDermott and you're like, okay, I think our top option is Joe Brady, and then we're going to go and we're going to interview all these guys, especially when you interview a guy like Phillip Rivers in there. Like, you can't be – Joe Brady was the first guy you interviewed, and then you go down this entire list. It's shocking. It's a little bit surprising. Not the direction that I thought they'd go in. Definitely a direction that I told myself could happen. Like Phillip Rivers, I was like, that's not going to happen. I don't think that ever was going to. But Joe Brady was always up there as a definite possible candidate, but that doesn't make it any less surprising.
So one of the points you made there was, why now? And I saw the same report as you that there was I don't know who said, maybe Schefter, one of the insiders.
I believe it was Schefter. That
all the coaching openings will be filled by middle of this week. Mm-hmm. And I was with you. Well, if the Bills want to talk to Clint Kubiak, obviously that wouldn't be the case. And why do the Bills need to rush? It's them and the Raiders and the flotsam of the NFL. They should be able to pick whoever they want. Joe Brady did have a second interview with the Raiders. So there was some momentum going that way to where the Bills may have felt motivated to want to keep Brady and make sure they didn't let him get away if he was going to be the guy. So in terms of like my first few thoughts here, number one, you do get to keep continuity with this move. You know that this guy has a relationship with the quarterback that makes sense, that at least is good enough. I don't know if Josh is good buddies with Joe Brady like he is with Davis Webb, but there certainly is a comfortability factor. In addition, you know that this guy's offense works. It's not bad. I don't think it's great, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but there's a production level with Joe Brady as an assistant that if you make him the head coach, you feel like you're not going to lose that. So all those things, feel that makes sense to me in terms of what the Bills are doing with this. You do also have the opportunity here to have what's a first-time head coach. And with a first-time head coach, most coordinators that are not named Ben Johnson, they're all pretty much the same. They had some success at the place they were at, or they worked with a really good head coach, but they're all kind of a dart throw. So, but the other thing is they may be a dart throw, but they could be anything. They could be a really great coach. If the Bills had hired an experienced guy like Brian Daboll, you kind of know where you're getting to a degree a bit because he's already been a head coach. It's like the old Family Guy joke with what's in the box. Joe Brady could be anything right now. So you still get that with Joe Brady, but on top of that, you do also get the opportunity to have a guy who's been in the building already. So even though he's a first-time head coach, he doesn't need to figure out where the offices are. He knows who the equipment guy is. He knows who who sweeps the floors. He knows how things kind of work. So although it's a first-time head coach, which don't generally go to the Super Bowl, this is one that's going to have more advantages than most first-time head coaches. The thing that really gets me about this hire is that if you looked at all the different coordinators who are up for a job, it feels like Joe Brady has done maybe the worst job of all of them. And I'm not sitting there and comparing, Shieldhouse and Udinski and Kubiak and all those guys to Joe Brady. But it's not like Joe Brady had such a great year or a couple years with the Bills that you're like, the only place you can go with this dude is up. He was fine. He was good. He wasn't great. He's not super creative. I know he figured out how to make a hook and ladder work, but outside of that, this is
three
not,
times.
Exactly, 3 times. This is not a guy that people are talking about his offensive philosophies with, wow, I never thought of that before. Like we've said, Joe Brady's best attribute has been, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I have this. I'm going to keep doing this over and over until defenses stop us, which is not stupid. It's smart, but it's not ridiculously creative. So, like I said, I land on uninspiring. This is what it's going to be. Doesn't mean it can't work. Like I said, as much as the joke is this guy could be anything, he legitimately could be. We have no idea how he is as a CEO. We have no idea how he is in terms of managing the entirety of a team. We have no idea how he is when it comes to being the face of a franchise in front of the media. All these things matter to a degree when it is a head coach. So I know a lot of the people in the fan base are not super happy about this, but at the end of the day, this is what you had available. This was not a good year to be looking for a head coach. And the fact that Joe Brady is what you landed on may be as much a comment on the field as it is Joe Brady. I want to go back to something you talked about. I don't know if you brought it up on the air yet or just in the office when we were talking about it. The idea this is plan C. I think you did bring it up on the show.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did say it.
How strongly do you feel that way, that this was not who the Bills wanted? Because I don't know if I can land there. I can see, we talked about this idea too, that they talked to a bunch of people, thought they might find better than Joe Brady, and then didn't and landed on Joe Brady. Doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing, but that's kind of how I think this went, as opposed to we wanted this guy or this guy and it didn't work out for whatever reason. So we'll take Joe Brady.
I guess it just, for me, it feels like there were enough good options out there, enough options that, to me at least, were a little more intriguing than Joe Brady. Enough options that maybe have higher upside, a higher ceiling, if you may, although the floor might be lower. It just, with how much of a knee-jerk reaction the firing of Sean McDermott seemed to me, with how, and Terry Pegula pretty much confirmed that it was. He pretty much said that he walked in the locker room, saw how everyone looked, and said, all right, Sean's got to go. And according to him, there was no prior thought that Sean was going to go. So it was a very just like out of the blue, out of nowhere reaction. To me, when you look at the candidates, you got to think, if you're letting Sean go that quick in that scenario, you got to think you want to go outside the building. Like it made me feel like they wanted to get a fresh face. They wanted to get a fresh start. And not saying that Joe Brady's not a good candidate, but I felt like there were better ones out there that they were trying to get. And I don't know. It almost feels like this was like, hey, let's try to get a guy like Clint Kubiak. Let's hope that they lose. Okay, well, now they don't lose. We don't want to sit around and wait forever. There's a couple other options, but I guess Joe Brady's the best one. I just have a hard time seeing Joe Brady being option A.
I think the Clint Kubiak part of it is a big one.
Yeah.
I think it's very possible that's how it went, that they were hoping that Seattle would lose so they could talk to Clint Kubiak and make him available. I don't know if I can get to plan C. I know what you're saying with that.
Plan C might be a stretch, but I think,
even plan B though. Even plan B.
So you think that Joe Brady from the very beginning was plan A?
I think you're right. I don't think they had a plan A. I think, like you said,
I don't think they had a plan
good
A.
point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think they walked in and said, Sean's gone. Now what do we do? Exactly, right.
Yeah.
And then let's talk to everybody. And at the end of the day, Joe Brady was the best. I also, and Rachel will take your take on this too. I don't know. I think I would be surprised if you gave them a lie detector test and they told you they thought Joe Brady was going to win this search at the beginning. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't expect.
Like, you think they didn't think he would win at the beginning?
I think they interviewed Joe Brady because you always interview the guy who's in house, and then if you had asked them to lay money on who they're going to hire, no one would have bet on Joe Brady.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is at the beginning, I don't think he was the best guy, and then as the process went on, maybe Brian Daboll didn't blow you away like you thought he would. I think we can all agree that at the very beginning, Brian Daboll was the obvious choice. And now maybe things progressed a certain way. Maybe some of maybe Anthony Lynn or Anthony Weaver didn't impress you as much. Maybe Grant Udinski didn't impress you, or he doesn't have a deep enough resume. He didn't, that, whatever it may be. Something like Clint Kubiak not being available when you thought he might be available. All these kind of things. It's just, you hire Joe Brady. That's the first interview that you do is Joe Brady. If he blew you away, and if you knew going out of that interview that this is the guy, why are you interviewing a guy like Phillip Rivers? Like that to me, that's my thought process is I don't think, not only you're saying, I don't think they knew right away. I don't think they knew even last weekend, like 3 days ago. I don't think they knew.
I go back to you saying you don't think they had a plan A. I don't think they had a plan A either. I think Terry Pegula fully, just as he said, made the decision in the moment and fired Sean McDermott and did not really consider the landscape of who is out there. Joe Brady, and I've seen, people talking about this too. If you want to keep Joe Brady with your team, you have to promote him to head coach because he's been interviewing for, I think it was like 3/4 of the head coach vacancies at this point. So I agree with Caleb's point that I don't think he was plan A, but I do think the thing about the Bills is they love an in-house promotion. I mean, they did it.
Good point.
They did it with Joe Brady to promote him to OC. They did it with Bobby Babich to promote him to defensive coordinator. They bring in guys all last year, like players that they had in-house to come back on the practice squad. I just think Terry Pegula, that just might be the type of owner that he is. We just keep bringing, these guys that we've had. But the thing to me that stands out is in the press conference with Bean and Pegula afterwards, Pegula kept stressing, we keep hitting this playoff wall. We keep hitting this playoff wall. So why are you promoting a guy that was a part of the playoff wall that you keep hitting for the last 3 years or however many he's been OC? It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't think Joe Brady's the worst option of the people that they interviewed. I mean, like you said, Phillip Rivers was one of them, and that was certainly not the best option. But it still doesn't feel like – it feels like, in a way, like I feel like maybe we should have expected this. I mean, just the way that this – the firing of Sean McDermott being so sudden, the group of coaches that were available, the way the Bills have operated in the past, I feel like maybe this isn't as surprising as it feels just because this just seems like something the Bills would do. And it's not, I mean, Joe Brady's a great coach. I mean, the Bills' offense has been good, but like you said, we've said he's like a 7 out of 10 as an OC at best. So I don't know. I think I do agree, though, that maybe they expected other coordinators or other people to blow them away, and they just didn't. And Joe Brady's there, and he knows the system. And Josh Allen has to be a big part of this, too, I would think, of who they keep with or who they make head coach. So I don't know. I don't think, like I said, I don't think they had any plan. I think Joe Brady was just kind of like, well, he's here, and we know he's been here, and the guys like him. So this will be our guy. Let's
talk about Josh Allen for a second, because he was in the interview process. According to Peter Schrager, I think it was, I'm trying to keep my insiders straight today. He was in the process, but did not do anything in terms of narrowing the field down. In other words, he wasn't like, no to Phillip Rivers, yes to Joe Brady, no to Grant, all that stuff. But Rachel, how much do we think that Allen was a part of this process, and how much do we think his opinion weighed in on who the Bills ultimately decided to go with?
I think it was a huge part of the process. Even if Josh Allen didn't directly sit there and tell Terry Pegula, Brandon Beane's my number one guy that I want to be, or not Brandon Beane, Joe Brady's my number one guy that I want to be coaching me. I think it does have a huge thing because, like I said last week, a lot of that press conference was, we need to win Josh Allen a Super Bowl. Josh Allen needs to get the help that he needs to get over this hump. Josh Allen needs to do this. And whether or not Josh Allen, like I said, was directly, I mean, you said he wasn't sitting there saying no to this one, yes to this one, and so on and so forth. But I feel like it has to have a big play when so much of your offense revolves around Josh Allen and what Josh Allen needs. So like I said, I don't think at least looking back, I'm not as surprised as I initially was, just kind of considering the full picture.
I do, in terms of not being as surprised as we all think initially were about Joe Brady being the guy. When you start to sit down and like do pros and cons, right? What do you want in a new coach? Well, you want a new direction. So clearly Brian Daboll wasn't going to be a part of that. And we'll get to that in a second. So you want a new coach. Okay, Joe Brady has that. But you also probably want an ability to hit the ground running and to have a good relationship with Josh Allen. Those are also Joe Brady things because he's been in the building. He knows Josh Allen. You probably want some sort of a high floor. Joe Brady checks that box too. So although it's not inspiring, when you look at like Grant Udinski, you can't get that in terms of his first year. He's not going to know the facility. You don't know if he works well with Josh Allen. You don't know, really, if his offense is going to work for your team. That goes for Clint Kubiak, too. All these guys are very unknowns in terms of what they're going to bring you. So Joe Brady has a level of competence, a level of something that you can believe in already, which I think makes him a little more attractive. I'm not saying this is a good idea, because Terry Pegula said we need a new direction. And other than firing Sean McDermott, right, they have not gone different.
2.0.
Exactly. They haven't gone. In fact, I was texting my mom, right? And she likes this hire. You know why she likes this hire? She goes, this is as close to rehiring McDermott as you can get.
I know. Maybe Bills fans should be happy with this, honestly. I mean, they were so mad that McDermott was fired. Maybe this is what they should be happy with. But
in terms of the Josh Allen part of it, I do have to wonder if Josh Allen was not a part of this. Let's say they said, nope, he's a player. He's not involved in this. He's over there. Do they go outside the organization, or are they more likely to, because you don't have 17 sitting right there saying, oh yeah, I know Joe Brady. He's great. I worked with him. Because there's no way that if Josh Allen was a part of the process, I can't imagine he gave Joe Brady anything but a glowing endorsement.
You wouldn't think so. I mean, at least to what he's kind of said to the press and the media, it seems like they really do get along. Obviously, who knows what it's like behind closed doors, but I don't think Allen was like the first one to talk in these interviews. But
One would hope so.
Well, yeah. But I do think that when they were having discussions and they were maybe saying like, oh, let's compare the pros and cons of Joe Brady and Brian Daboll. Let's all talk about it. I'm sure at that point they'd be like, Allen, what are your opinions? Like, I'm sure they just brought him in as kind of like the side we want to know what you think from a player's perspective. I almost feel like they used him more as less as you're Josh Allen and more as you're the leader of the Buffalo Bills, if that makes sense. But you would think that they probably have the best connection. And you said, I think you said that you bring in some of these other guys, there's unknowns as of how I think Joe Brady has the least amount of unknowns.
Yes.
Which is, you already know that he's going to work well. Who knows if he's going to be a good CEO? Who knows if he's going to be a good head coach? But those guys, the other guys have those same unknowns, but they also have are they going to work well with Josh Allen? So that's probably the biggest positive about Joe Brady is he has the least unknowns.
Let's move on to the Brian Daboll thing, because we talked about that a few times. Caleb, give me what's your reaction to the Bills not going with Brian Daboll? What do you think it says? I think most of us felt like if we were going to put our chips on the table somewhere, it was going to be on Brian Daboll. Not confidently, but if you had to make a choice among the guys they interviewed, that would have been the one. The Bills don't go there. Brian Daboll ends up in Tennessee as the offensive coordinator. What is the reaction to at least that part of it?
I think the reaction to him I think it's surprising. Above all, not only that he didn't get a job in Buffalo, but that nowhere wanted him. You know, I feel like he's still considered a good offensive mind. I know he kind of spun out a little bit in New York and it didn't really go well, but you can also take a look at that New York roster and what do you really expect him to do in just, what was he there for, 2 seasons? Is that what it was? Was it 2
3
or 3?
4. It was more than 2.
Was it more than 2?
Yeah.
But still, like that's a very quick turnaround still, especially in the NFL. I know it's tough because we've seen teams like the Houston Texans and the Washington Commanders these last couple of years have these quick turnarounds, so it's kind of just like expected. But I think those are kind of the special cases. I really thought that he was going to be one of the top guys because of the fact, like we said, his relationship with Josh Allen. But maybe I think what this proves to me is that although his relationship with Allen is good, maybe his relationship with Bean and Pegula aren't as good as we originally had thought.
It's a great call on that part of it too. Rach?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have said Daboll was going to be the guy. I mean, looking at who is out there. But I think it also shows too that maybe he didn't. I mean, there's been reports out there that Joe Brady, blew them away in their interview process and the CEO aspect of that. And Daboll just seems like he didn't do that. I mean, you would think this is a guy that wants to be in Buffalo and I'm sure won't take that job over being a coordinator with Tennessee. But I don't know. It's very weird. I would just assume that Brady had to have just knocked it out of the park in the interview. I mean, that's really the only conclusion I can come to as to why they would take Brady over Daboll, both being, having a good relationship. But too, like Caleb said, you don't know what their relationship is like with management. We really only know it from the Josh Allen perspective, and maybe the entire picture of Joe Brady was more appealing. I mean, obviously it was than Daboll was.
I think you nailed it with the CEO part, and not in the interview process specifically with Daboll. I think with Brady, and there's been reports that the CEO part he knocked it out of the park, like you said. I think with Dable, what happened with the Giants did enough damage that not just with the Bills, but league-wide, you wonder if people are looking at him as someone that you don't want to touch as a head coach right now. That he's going to have to re-earn that trust as someone who can be the CEO type. Because all Joe Brady has to go on in terms of his CEO credentials are what he does in the interview. With Brian Dable, you've got video of him being a CEO on the sideline. Not a good one, but him doing it. So I think that if the CEO part was a big part of this, and it was talked about in the Pagula Bean press conference, the Pagula, did I say the Pagula Bean? I'm trying to, sometimes I confuse the P and the B with that. In that press conference, that the CEO was going to be an important tenet to what the new coach is going to have. Brian Dable is not high on the CEO power rankings right now. Joe Brady did a good interview. That might have been enough to move him across the line there.
I'm just shocked that Joe Brady is high on the C. I mean, he must have had a really good interview. That's all I could say.
Well, but again,
that's the only way I feel
like we said, though, if it's Brian Dable versus Coordinator X, all Coordinator X has to do is talk a good game because he's got no resume for it.
That's true. Yeah.
So, and if he does, you're probably going to be ahead of Brian Dable. And clearly, I think that's what the Bills thought, and I think maybe what the league might think, that Dable is a guy they tried, and no one wants to really touch that and go that route again anytime soon. All right, give me your best and worst. We'll do best first, real quick. And I don't have to go deep into explaining it, but around the room, the best thing about Joe Brady being the head coach of the Bills, Rachel.
I mean, I think you said earlier continuity. I think maybe that's just generally the best thing. I think just potentially retaining some guys that we didn't know if could be on the Bills roster next year, but we obviously don't know what that situation looks like. But just continuity, I think relationship wise would probably be the best option because he's the one that's worked with them for the last few years. So that's probably it.
I think you know what you're going to get when it comes to a play caller, when it comes to a coach, when it comes to, I know he was up in the box, but a guy on the sideline, like a guy on the practice field. But maybe even more importantly, you know who you're going to get like as a culture guy. You know his personality, you know his relationships with not only Josh Allen, but the entire offense, with the entire team, with the rest of the staff. I mean, this is a guy that already has a relationship with Brandon Beane and Terry Pagula as well. You don't have to now try to create a new relationship there. So I think the best thing is probably, continuity, but not only at the like play calling level.
I don't know if mine is the best because my best are what you guys say, but I think one of the things that I'm very interested about, at least, is to see what kind of coordinator, what kind of offense he's going to run without Sean McDermott over his head. Mm-hmm. Does it change? Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be exactly the same, but we should find out pretty quickly what the full spectrum is of Joe Brady offensive knowledge right away. And maybe who he chooses as a coordinator will be a part of that. But I think there's a reasonable thought that, well, Sean McDermott's the head coach and therefore he gets to have some say, and maybe there's some constricting to the offense. We will at least have the answer of what else. We will know what the full knowledge base of Joe Brady is. And this is a guy, like you said, Rachel, that has interviewed a million times. This year, last year, when he was the Panthers, he's had a lot of chances to do this. So we'll find out what all these other coaches, all these other teams passed up on soon. And now that I think about it, he's had so many interviews. Of course he knocked the CEO part of the park. That dude's had plenty of practice, right? All right, worst part of this hire. Caleb, you can go first this time.
I think the worst part is the fact that we don't really know. We don't really know if this is a step forward from McDermott. Now, that's not really fair for Brady because the only really options out there were, like you said, Coordinator X and like Brian Daboll. There weren't really many options that we could confidently say this could be a step forward from where we were with McDermott. So I think that's probably my biggest negative is but again, that's not really against Joe Brady. That's against just the entire draft class, not draft class,
coach class.
Coach
it's
class.
Fair to call it that. Yeah.
We just don't. There's just no way to know if this is going to be anywhere even close to a step forward to what you had with McDermott.
Rach?
Yeah, similarly, like I said earlier, just Pagula kept saying this playoff wall, and it like we need to kind of get new leadership in here. And yeah, this is new leadership, but in a way, it's the same leadership. It just feels kind of like the same thing. This doesn't feel like a new person coming in. And I just thought about this too. maybe plays into the worst. Remember earlier in the season when Joe Brady was like, I don't believe in wide receiver ones. Like, how is that going to play out? Like, I know this doesn't pertain to the question, but like, it just came to my mind. How is that going to play out moving forward into this draft class and, adding people to this team? If Joe Brady doesn't believe in wide receiver ones,
maybe
that's a main issue. And now I'm just like, I don't like.
Maybe that's why Pagula and Beam went with him, because he doesn't believe in wide receiver ones. And there's rumors out there that Sean McDermott really wanted a wide receiver one, and Beam was like, "No, we don't need it." Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why this happened.
That just came to mind. I mean, that doesn't really have anything to do with this question, but like, I'm just wondering about what that situation is going to be. But worse, probably just the playoff wall. I think still exists.
For the sake of all the Bills fans watching and listening to this, I hope that is not the case, because if this is a move to take the we don't need wide receiver one power and just like focus it into one triumvirate of we don't care about wide receiver ones, it ain't going to work out very well for a lot of people, including Josh Allen. For me, the worst part is, and this is just me reading it, but from talking to this guy on a regular basis over the last 3 years as coordinator, he does not strike me as a head coach guy. He does not strike me as I'm going to be able to rally the troops. Because look, Rex Ryan had a lot of flaws. That dude could like whip up a locker room before a game for no particular reason like nobody else. I don't think Joe Brady can do this. I could easily be wrong, but I just don't see head coach inspiring material coming from Joe Brady. Not that you have to have that, but that's just the part of it for me. He's got to hire some coordinators, guys. What do the Bills need, or what does Joe Brady need with the coordinator and assistant coaches that he's going to hire? Caleb?
I mean, for starters, and I don't have a particular name that comes to mind, but the Bills are going to need a really, really good defensive mind, because you get rid of McDermott, who was the defensive mind. I know Bobby Babish was the defensive coordinator, but McDermott was the defensive mind in that room. You get rid of him. It's hard to just expect Bobby Babish to become a really strong defensive mind if he already wasn't before. And now you replace McDermott with an offensive guy, which I think has its positives, it has its perks, but now you're just nowhere on defense. So for starters, a really, really good defensive mind. And then when it comes to an offensive coordinator, I mean, if Brady's going to be the main offensive mind, you don't need someone crazy at offensive coordinator. Just, I guess, someone that can have a good relationship with Josh Allen, because not that Joe Brady's relationship with Josh Allen isn't going to be there, but now Joe Brady has a whole nother world that he has to pay attention to, and his focus can't just be on Josh Allen.
I'm with you on the defensive coordinator. Jim Leonard is the latest rumor. He actually would be a good hire. I might, in terms of like defensive knowledge, I do think the Bills probably got to go experienced defensive coordinator. I don't think you can have Jim Leonard being a first-time coordinator under Brady as a first-time coach. Offensive coordinator, I want someone out of the box. I want someone that's going to come in and have totally wild thoughts. Joe Brady can run the offense. I want someone that's going to come in and say, to challenge him. I don't worry about the relationship with Josh Allen. That's Joe Brady's job. Yeah. I want someone to challenge the head coach in terms of let's do this, let's think about this outside the box, let's go this different way. Put those two minds together more so than worrying about my coordinator getting along with my quarterback. I think Joe will handle that. Rach?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think offensively, you got to bring in an OC that, like you said, has to like shake things up in some way. I agree. I think just because Joe Brady is just Sean McDermott 2.0, I think you need somebody to come in and shake things up. Just like you said, someone that's out of the box, has a little bit of experience. Maybe, Joe Brady being this young guy, you need someone with experience in there. So I think make it fun. Like, let's see something different. I don't want to see the same McDermott offense that we saw last year.
Here's a quick question then. Who, and this might just not be me knowing, who hires that OC? Is that like
head coach?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, we got 30 seconds left. Around the room quick. Are the Bills closer or further to the Super Bowl? Rachel?
I think they're exactly the same. I think the playoff wall still exists, and I think it's right there.
Caleb?
Exactly the same. Exactly the same as they were last week.
Further. You got a new coach who's got to learn a whole lot of things about being a head coach. I don't think that makes you closer to the Super Bowl. Remember, first-time head coaches only twice have gone to the Super Bowl since the 80s. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for watching BKL Nightly. We will catch you again next week when we continue our off-season shows.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.